Welcome back to the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. I'm Joe Noga, joined by Paul Hoynes. Hoynes, the All-Star game is tonight in Atlanta. Stephen Kwan will be there. We'll be not in the American League starting lineup, but we'll play some in the outfield later on in the game. Jose Ramirez, elected to start, will not be there, not choosing to attend to focus on his recovery and his health. So as far as what Cleveland's interest should be in this game, last night the home run derby took place, and Big Dumper, one of our favorite nicknames, Cal Raleigh, goes out there and he outlasts the competition after O'Neill Cruz put on quite a show. But for Guardians fans, for the front office, for the executives who traded away Junior Caminero, pretty much breathing a sigh of relief this morning that Caminero didn't come through and make headlines as the home run derby champion.
He came close, Joe. It looked like he just ran out of gas at the end. He started taking too many pitches and just ran out of time, but put on quite a show. That was an impressive performance by the young man.
What do you think of the home run derby as like sort of one of the jewel events of All-Star weekend of the season for Major League Baseball? It's sort of grown and evolved into this bigger showcase, and as they've added different rules, bonuses and time and distance and all that kind of stuff, and as the home runs are able to be tracked and measured electronically, more than it's more than just going out there and just swinging for the fences these days.
Yeah, I remember when Jim Thome was invited to the home run derby at Progressive Field. I think he was at Cedar Point. And, he was a late entry. They called him. They see if he wanted to do it. He rushed back and, just kind of jumped into uniform. And he did not do very well. But these guys, this is serious business now. With $1 million prize money, they've upped their ante here. It's pretty good. It's fun viewing if you like that stuff.
Yeah, and nowadays you get the players out on the field in the leather couches. Sort of watch your teammates and your peers are out there. There's a lot more pressure. It's done at night. The 97 one you're talking about with Jim Thome, where I think he either hit 0 or 1 home runs. Like, he didn't hit very many home runs in that derby, which is just amazing for a guy who hit 600 for his career. It's turned into sort of like this showcase, and you get the belt afterwards, you get the chain, you get all that kind of stuff as it's more like a WWE event if you look at it. But for a guy like O'Neill Cruz, who he plays in Pittsburgh, not a lot of people see a lot of what he can do, from coast to coast nationally. It's a big exposure thing for him, for people to see what kind of power he has.
Yeah, he's a tremendous athlete, Joe. Not a real good baseball player, though, unfortunately, for the Pirates. He's got a lot of rough edges. He needs to, that need to be refined, but he can he's got power. Look at it. You look at his frame. What is he, 6'6", something? He reminds me of De La Cruz almost. They're built along the same lines, and he can generate some pop.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about what a 6'6", 230-pound frame can do for a prospect here in a little bit. But just to stick with the All-Star theme and what to expect tonight, you and I were just commenting on the lineups, the American League versus the National League here. Aaron Boone has he can feel a little more reassured with penciling in an Aaron Boone, or I'm sorry, an Aaron Judge's name in the lineup, because he knows what he's getting there. But the rest of that lineup for the AL kind of lacking in star power.
Yeah, definitely, Joe. They're leading off with Gleyber Torres, former Yankee. Now with Detroit, you've got Ryan O'Hearn in there at DH. There's a guy that was released by DFA by Kansas City. Junior Caminero has worked his way into the starting lineup at third base with Jose Ramirez withdrawing. Javi Baez is the starting center fielder. I know that kind of irks you a little bit. And Wilson, the shortstop from the Athletics. Nobody even knows where the Athletics play, Joe, and this guy's in the All-Star game.
Right. Yeah, you can't even say Oakland anymore. Jacob Wilson, certainly a deserving candidate, but he's not Bobby Witt Jr. He's not the guy that finished second in the American League voting for MVP last year. So, yeah, just a little bit of lack of star power. But on the NL side, when you're leading off with Shohei Ohtani, you pretty much can't go wrong.
Yeah, Ohtani, Acuna, Freddie Freeman, Machado. Kyle Tucker, Cisco Lindor. That'll put fannies in the seats if you're going to watch a lineup like that.
Yeah, the indication there with Francisco Lindor batting eighth in that lineup, I guess this is a $300 million player, and he's batting in the bottom third of your order, and tells you that you're pretty stacked. But the pitching matchup, I think, is at least for the first inning or so, is going to be what everybody's talking about and everybody's looking at. Paul Skeens, the darling of the league, Pittsburgh Pirates starter. We've seen him up close. The Guardians beat him in Pittsburgh, but Tarek Skubal, obviously a guy that Cleveland's very familiar with. When he's hot, there's nobody better.
Yeah, Scooble is in a class by himself right now, Joe. We've seen him twice this year, and the Guardians haven't stopped swinging and missing since. He's got electric stuff, dominant pitcher, and Skeens has, quote unquote star power. We were both at PNC Park when it was his bobblehead night day, and they were lined up across the Roberto Clemente Bridge to get into the ballpark to get a bobblehead. You got to love Skeens, and great pitching match. Skeens, Scooble, it doesn't get any better than that. That's an all-star game pitching match.
Yeah, it should be fun to watch. So the All-Star game, not the only thing happening in Atlanta this week. Of note, of course, they moved the draft now takes place in concurrence with the All-Star game, and that just wrapped up. It's a 2-day event now. Yesterday, the majority of the drafting took place with the rounds 17 through 20. The first 3 rounds took place Sunday night. We're going to go through some of the Guardian selections, and you're going to notice a pattern, I guess, in some of these picks, and guys that look and stand about the same height and size as O'Neal Cruz, that big 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", big athletic frames, guys that can run, guys that can hit the ball a long way. It's a bit of a pattern for the Guardians that they sort of have taken ever since drafting Chase DeLauder back in 2020 2022.
Yeah, 2022.
Yeah, I guess they like a certain body type and a certain athletic profile, and that certainly carried over into this year. The number 1 pick, first round pick for Cleveland, number 27 overall, Jace LaViolette, the left-handed swinging outfielder from the Texas A&M. Just, there's a lot to like about this kid outside of the baseball field, particularly with his makeup.
Yeah, he was projected to be a first-round pick, Joe. At least go in the first round, and maybe a number 1 pick overall. Kind of struggled a little bit this season, but overall just has mashed at his 3 years at Texas A&M for the Aggies. 68 home runs total. This guy is 6'6", 230, like you said. And interesting choice. For years and years, all these guys did, the Guardians, were draft middle infielders. Now they're getting a little they're looking for some pop on the corners.
Yeah, for an organization that's sort of in the last few years, in the last couple of playoff runs, has been sort of saddled with the tag of, hey, they can't hit the ball out of the ballpark, light hitting. They're certainly addressing that through the draft with these picks. But Hoynes, I talk about LaViolette's character and his makeup and his build in the SEC tournament back in late May. He was hit on the hand with the pitch, had to come out of the game after making it down to first. Went and had surgery that night and was in the lineup the next day after the Aggies beat Auburn. He was in the lineup to face LSU later on that next day. That tells you something, Cleveland fans are going to like this kid just for the toughness that he displays.
Yeah, definitely. That's impressive, Joe. I wonder how much surgery did he need? They have to is like the Bionic Man? Did they replace his hand? That's impressive, man. That's you got a gamer there.
Yeah, and like you said, 68 home runs, I think 130 some walks, all-time records for the Aggies. So he can hit the ball out of the ballpark. He can control the strike zone. And Hoynes, he brings with him one of the greatest nicknames I think we've seen since Tugboat Wilkinson. We're going to have a lot of fun with Lord Tubbington. This is the nickname that Jace LaViolette brings with him as he's drafted at Cleveland. I guess, a teammate who transferred in after his freshman year and was just sort of breaking guys down in the locker room in the clubhouse. Started calling him Tubby, as in Teletubby, because he says he looked like a Teletubby, and that eventually evolved to Lord Tubbington. So I can't wait till somebody has a Lord Tubbington jersey and they're walking around Progressive Field. Give him a crown, give him a scepter, give him a cape, and let him go crazy out there in right field for the Guardians.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good one, Joe. Cocoa Crisp. Is it a Cocoa Crisp? I'm not sure, but it's right there. It's really close. They're neck and neck.
Yeah, it will eventually get up there and be one of the all-time great Guardians nicknames that we've seen. Go for actually 4 out of their first 5 picks go as college players. They select Dean Curley from Tennessee, a shortstop. Another guy, a big, long frame, can generate some power, 6'3", 218 pounds. He was their second round pick, number 64 overall. And Aaron Walton, another big bat, 6'3", 219 pounds. He's an outfielder from Arizona. So it looked like early on they're just trying to address that need for power.
Yeah, definitely, Joe. And, Curley and Walton are right-handed hitters. I believe LaViolette is he left-handed? Is he left-handed
Yeah,
hitter?
LaViolette's a left-handed hitter, yes.
Yeah. So, that's that kind of, they've got a lot. That lineup is left-handed. It's always been left-handed heavy. It seems like Cleveland's lineup the last 3 or 4 years. So they don't depart from tradition there. But Curley and Walton, are right-handed hitters, which, I think is encouraging. They need to balance that lineup. Of course, these guys are 2-3 years away, but they're college players, so they're on the fast track. So we could see these guys in 3 years at the outside.
Yeah, and they took with their 5th pick on the first day, they took Nolan Schubart, an outfielder from Oklahoma State, another left-handed swinging, tall. He's 6'5", 223. 59 home runs in his career with Oklahoma State. So they took 2 left-handed bats, 2 right-handed bats, all of them over 6'3", all of them 220 pounds plus. They definitely have a profile that they were trying to fill there. And then with their 4th pick on that first day, they did take a high school pitcher, Will Hoynes. And strangely enough, this is a kid he's a 6'2" right-hander out of Mississauga, Ontario, Canada, home of the Naylor brothers.
Yeah, what are the odds on that, Joe? I mean, Cleveland has become the collection point for Canadian players. Cade Smith, the Naylor brothers, now
Eric Sabrowski.
Yeah, Sabrowski and Will Hoynes has joined them, and I think there's another Canadian, maybe one of the first basemen they drafted, Riley Nelson, perhaps. I'm not sure, but I have to check that. But yeah, they've mined into Canada. I guess they don't want. I don't know if they wanted to become the first state or not, but they're using Canada, the Canadian baseball organization, to bring some talent here.
Well, and Will Hoynes, a kid who pitched on the Canadian junior national team, which the Naylor brothers both had a lot of experience and exposure with, as well as Cade Smith. So they played for Greg Hamilton, who was the manager of that junior national team. That team always takes a trip to the Dominican Republic to play some games every year. And while down in the Dominican, the Guardians Dominican scouting complex and all that got to basically see these kids play and see Will Hoynes. So he really stood out to the Guardian scouts in the Dominican, playing as a Canadian national player. And the one thing that sort of jumped off the page and sort of the metrics that are screaming at scouts with Will Hoynes was his spin rate. It's up to, elite levels for a high school kid and, something close to what you would want for professionals, for major leaguers. He's somewhere in that 2,700 to 2,800 rotations per minute with his, so you're talking about, a kid who's got elite spin rates for his age level and even into the pro ranks. They're going to be able to do a lot with him with his secondary stuff.
Yeah, and where's he committed to, Joe? Wake Forest, maybe?
I think he's Wake Forest commit. So taking him with that number 5 pick, it gets him a slot number and, pretty much guarantees that he's not going to go.
Yeah, his slot value is like just over $1 million. So we'll see how that.
Yeah. So, that first day, that first night of the draft, Clearly, the Guardians had, a sort of a goal to sort of bring in more power to the organization. What did they do on the second day that just sort of stood out to you as a general philosophy?
Yeah, Joe. They stayed with the college player, really heavy. This was just a college player draft, I think, out of the 22 guys they took. They, only three high school players. The first guy the first pick in the second day in the fourth round was a guy that was, he kind of fits the Guardians playbook. Luke Hill from Mississippi, infielder that plays all three different positions, all four, can bounce around the infield. He started at Arizona State, transferred to Mississippi. Good contact hitter. Not a lot of power. High average hitter. So an interesting choice there, Joe.
But some of those picks early on the second day were guys that could be developed, and it looks like they can develop some of that raw power. What did the scouts, or what did Paul Gillespie, the director of scouting, have to say about some of the potential for these guys?
Yeah, it was interesting in the fifth round, they took a first baseman, Riley Nelson from Vanderbilt. And in the eighth round, I'm sorry. Yeah, in the eighth round, they took another first baseman, Anthony Martinez from UC Irvine. Both, 6'3", 220 pounds, left-handed hitters. And usually, in the past, they haven't really doubled down on first baseman, especially that close together in the draft. But, Paul Gillespie felt that, with a few tweaks here and there in both these guys, swings, they could develop some power because they're both high average hitters, not a lot of, power, but they've got raw power. So, the goal is to unlock that, to maybe tinker with their swings to see if they can get the most out of that raw power from Nelson and Martinez. So the two interesting picks there.
Yeah, and it's not like a lot of these guys are going to be, up with the club immediately or anytime in the next couple of years. So there's time for these players to develop. When is the deadline to sign all of these picks basically before they lose the rights to them?
Yeah, July 28th, they've got to have them signed, Joe. And, in the past, the Guardians, they don't draft them unless they know they're going to sign. They've got a pretty good, a pretty solid idea that these guys want to come to, they want to turn pro, depending on the slot value, but usually they don't get drafted unless they're signed. And unless they're signable, and they'll take all these guys to Arizona in a couple, I would imagine at the end of this week or next week, introduce them to the organization and then go from there. But that's the plan right now.
All right, so very interesting to see sort of the trends and just that the play to sort of bring in more power to the organization and go from there. You draft big boys, you expect big home runs and big offensive totals there at some point down the road. Shifting away from the draft, once the All-Star festivities are over and once we get back to the business of playing baseball at the end of this week, the Guardians will be hosting the A's in a series over the weekend at Progressive Field. We should find out or at least get an update on the investigation about Luis Ortiz and the potential gambling scandal that surrounds that. What can we expect on the Luis Ortiz investigation by the end of the week?
Yeah, Joe, when they put Ortiz on paid leave, they said the investigation would run at least through the All-Star break. That's Friday, and we'll find out if the investigation is extended or or what their ruling is. So next couple of days is going to be very, very interesting with Ortiz and his future with the Guardians.
Yeah, that should be interesting to find that out. Shane Bieber on schedule to make a rehab start tonight or today in Arizona. We could hear back by Friday about the next step for Shane Bieber as well.
Yeah, I think if this goes well, this is 2 innings, I think 2-3 innings, 30 to 40 pitches, I believe. So we'll see how this goes. And if it goes well, Joe, I would think he's headed back toward Ohio, and either for his next step would be a rehab at AA Akron. And then hopefully he progresses there from, a couple more starts and that goes to Columbus. And maybe we see him, Joe. What do you think? Mid-August, late August, if all goes well?
Yeah.
Right
If he
around
stays
there.
on track, Yeah, if he stays on track with no setbacks, you probably need 3 to 4 outings, and then you're good to go, right?
Yeah, I would think they're going to be careful with them. The season, the sand is running out of the hourglass of the season here, so we'll see. We'll see. I don't think they'll rush him, but I would think if everything progresses well, we could see him late August sometime.
And we don't have any new information on Chase DeLauder as he's dealing with a wrist injury.
Yeah, they were still arranging when he would be examined and be the Cleveland doctors would get a look at him. There I guess when everybody's at the All-Star break, everybody's on break, so maybe they're having some logistical problems. But I would think we'd have some kind of word by Friday on just his status, and hopefully he's able to continue playing, Joe, because that's another guy we'd like to see at some point in the last 2 months of the season.
Yeah, definitely. All right, going to wrap up today's edition of the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. But Hoynesy, I got to mention once again, finalist on the ballot for the Career Excellence Award for the BBWAA. Congratulations on being a finalist 2 years in a row. Tom Verducci and Scott Miller also on the ballot. Of course, Verducci, a longtime writer with Sports Illustrated, and the late Scott Miller recently passed. He had worked with the New York Times and Bleacher Report in his career. But my money, my votes are on Paul Hoynes, Hall of Famer in every way. We'll be pulling for you as the vote gets ready to be taken in November there. Just what's your reaction to being on the ballot again?
Well, I didn't know that, Joe. Now I'm nervous. No,
Very good.
It's a thrill to be on the honor on the ballot. I know Verducci. I knew Scott Miller. Was real close with Scott Miller, and he's a great guy. R.I.P. Really miss him. It's we'll have to see how it works, man. But I'm excited to be on it. I'm honored to be on it.
Nine votes away last year. I think you got a real good chance this year. So we're pulling for you, Hoynesy. We talk about it more as we get closer to the end of the season. And that'll wrap up today's edition of the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. Hoynesy, we'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Good deal, Joe. Thanks, man.